Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie. I'm a book loving, notebook hoarding, literacy teacher educator on a mission to change lives one book and one notebook at a time. And this is the Get Literate podcast, a podcast where we explore the power of reading and writing to cultivate a life we love. Each week, I offer a bit of bibliotherapy and share 3 books you need to know about on a bookish theme to fuel our reading hearts and help us grow through what we go through. But that's not all. I also invite you to extend those bookish themes into your own life through notebooking, lifelong learning, and creativity to experience the life-changing magic of reading in our lives. And the best part? Each episode is only 20 minutes or less, so you can spend less time listening and more time reading. Now, on to today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 19 of the Get Literate podcast. I'm Stephanie, and I'm really excited to dive into today's bookish theme with you. One of the things I love most about books is the ability to travel to drastically different worlds within the course of a day or a week, right? Depending on what we choose to read and then what we choose to read next, we can do whatever we want in our life inside the pages of the book. And that's what we're doing here today. Last week, we went from talking about intriguing, spooky books to give us a little mood reading for the season to this week, where we're going to take a hard left turn into a fun, whimsical topic. And today, we are talking about books about cake. Yes, I said cake. If you don't know already, I have a terrible sweet tooth. And hands down, my favorite dessert in the whole entire world is cake, specifically vanilla cake with homemade vanilla frosting. But if I'm really honest, actually, I don't even need the cake. It's really just the vessel to hold the frosting that I am after. That's how much of a sweet tooth I have. Homemade frosting by the spoonful is something that you see me partaking in a little too more often. But if you really know me, you also know that I am gluten-free and dairy-free, and lately I'm low sugar too. So while I love cake, it doesn't always love me back, and I don't always get to eat it. So what do? I read about it instead. And let me tell you, the more I looked into this topic as a bookish topic, the more books I found than I thought. Yes, I found cookbooks, and yes, I found recipe collections, but I found some pretty amazing, moving works of fiction that were all centered around cake. So what seems like a whimsical reading theme today actually has some pretty deep roots in the 3 books that I want to share. So let's get to it. The first book I want to share is The Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake by Amy Bender. Now, this was the first cake book I had read, and it was delightfully unexpected. I am not typically a fan of the supernatural or a fan of fantasy books, but the premise behind this book was just too irresistible for me not to pick it up. In the beginning, we meet 9-year-old Rose. And Rose, inexplicably and suddenly, becomes privy to the inner feelings and emotions of those around her by eating the food they prepare and share. Wait, what? Yes, that's what I said. Whenever Rose eats something that has been hand prepared by someone, she instantly, in that first bite, gets an inside look into what that person is thinking and feeling. Crazy, right? So the first time it happens, Rose is 9 and she bites into her mother's absolutely delicious lemon cake. Now, this is a family recipe that has been passed down and that Rose has enjoyed her entire childhood. And she normally loves it. her mouth is watering at the chance to finally take the bite of the lemon cake her mother has been making and has been sitting on the kitchen table. But instead of feeling that delicious delight, she instead feels something she can't describe. She's suddenly overwhelmed with a feeling of sadness, a feeling of frustration, a feeling that there's something that just isn't right. And she can't explain it, and she doesn't know why, but she knows somehow it's connected to her mother's lemon cake. Now, over time, this starts happening to her more and more, not just when she eats her mother's lemon cake, but when she eats things that her father has prepared, or family members, or even strangers when they go out to dinner. And she's very confused. She's shocked. She doesn't know what's happening. She's starting to become a little undone by feeling all of these feelings around her because she's seeing a different side to everyone. Those people that she previously felt safe with, or felt comfort from, or felt love from, she is now feeling something else entirely, right? At 9 years old, she is now privy to the inner thoughts and feelings of adults that she loves, and that process is shaking her to her core. Now, the book follows her into her teenage years and into adulthood, where this sort of sixth sense, if you will, doesn't disappear. And in fact, it's intensified. And as you can imagine, it brings up all sorts of issues and all sorts of troubles and all sorts of difficulties living in the world this way. Now, eventually, later on, she might see it as a gift, even if she thought it was once frustrating, but she learns to live with it. She learns to embrace it, and she learns to figure out what life could and should be like with this particular gift. She's got an inside view into everyone's thoughts, and that gives her an inside view into how life actually works. Now, just think about that for a second. What if we could do that? What if we could take a bite of food that someone has prepared for us and instantly know what's going on in their innermost thoughts? What would that do? How would that make us shift what we think about everyone around us? And let's flip it for a minute. What if you made your signature dish, or you prepared your family dinner, and those around you could figure out what was going on in your head in a single taste of your food? What would that say about us? What would that say that we might be hiding? What if we didn't hide it? Why do we hide it in the first place? Right? These are the kinds of questions that this book brings up. And these questions have really stayed with me. It really brings up the idea of being our real selves, our authentic selves, being able to share them or not being able to share them. And that's when the trouble came, right? In the book for Rose, is she realized that people's outsides didn't always match their insides, and she wanted to know why. I mean, this is a powerful book. And if you are up to explore those kinds of questions, and if you are up for the kind of self-reflection that comes with that, because you just can't escape it, then I definitely recommend this book for you. It is a deep dive into the human mind and some what if kinds of questions. Very powerful. All right. So moving on from that powerful book, I want to introduce you to a second very powerful book, but in a much different way. The second book I want to share is Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. Now, you probably know already that I love a good family saga. I love a book that doesn't shy away from the complexities of real life and just puts it all out there for readers to relate to. That's the kind of book I love because I feel seen. I don't feel as alone, right? Books aren't always those fantasy aspects of what could be. I love reading about what actually is so that I can learn from it. This book does that. This book doesn't shy away from the complexities. It embraces them, and it literally puts it all out there for us to read. Now, the book moves back and forth from past to present, which is another feature of a book that I love. And in that pattern, we meet Eleanor Bennett. We meet Eleanor Bennett and her family. And unfortunately, this family is currently torn apart. It's torn apart from misunderstandings, from hurt feelings that people haven't recovered from, and from fear, too. Right? And while we might think that we have time to make all of these family rifts right, or we can fix them, mend these broken ties, we don't. And Eleanor, at the start of the story, unfortunately, passes away before she can mend her broken family, before she can reunite her children, Benny and Byron, together, and before she can fix her hurting heart. But she leaves behind a simple directive for Benny and Byron, her children, to listen to hours of audio recordings that she has left behind together. They must listen to them together so that they can understand, they can know the whole story behind what has happened, and hopefully they can heal in ways they haven't yet imagined too. But that's not all. Along with these hours and hours of audio recordings is a black cake wrapped up, snug and secure in an aluminum foil in the freezer. The black cake is a family tradition in Eleanor's family, starting with her own childhood and moving up through the years. The black cake has been a staple. It's been a staple to the family's traditions, to their celebrations, and just how the family comes together. Now, the black cake is something, but let me tell you, the audio recordings that we learn about in this book are everything. We learn about Eleanor and her childhood. We learn about the traumatic events that she has been through. We learn about her journey from the Caribbean to the new countries that she has settled in. We learn about her courtship with her husband. We get the entire evolution of her life, and we get her innermost thoughts, feelings, and more. Especially how important that black cake is to her heritage and her family. And in the process, Benny and Byron get an inside look into their mother, the things they didn't know, the things that they never knew to feel, and they start to understand. Now, there's a lot more that I'm not saying. I don't want to add any spoilers here, but these audio recordings will literally alter everyone's life forever. And in the process, they could probably heal them too, if Benny and Byron and the other cast of characters that you meet will allow it. And then you'll figure out where the black cake comes into it too. This book is so good. It is as good as I imagine that black cake to taste. And I love how the author weaves in all of this family drama with the stability of the family black cake. That back and forth and that balance, that makes the story so riveting. And I highly, highly recommend it, if you couldn't already tell. So third up, I've got one more book focused on our theme of cake. And this one is The Coincidence of Coconut Cake by Amy E. Riker. Now, if I am completely honest with you, I specifically searched for this book to keep my theme of books about cake going. I had already read The Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake. I read Black Cake. I loved reading stories that had that as a central thread that I wanted to keep going. And so I searched for a book about this topic particularly, and The Coincidence of Coconut Cake came up. And I am so glad I did, because I would have never known this book existed. I would have never have found this book if I didn't lean into this really fun, whimsical, bookish theme, right? And you never know where these themes take you. So this book, let me ask you a question. Do you believe that everything happens for a reason? In general, I do. And that's why I think I loved this book so much, because what seems to be an unlikely series of events, sparked, of course, by a coconut cake, what ends up being or what seems to be these unlikely series of events for all of the characters, actually ended up putting them exactly where it needed to be. And yes, all sparked by that delicious coconut cake. I mean, what better way to be threaded together? So this book follows Lou. And Lou is a very cheerful woman who unfortunately is struggling to keep her new restaurant afloat and to keep her fiance happy. At the same time, we get to know Al. Al is a very grumpy British food critic who's been transplanted to Wisconsin and isn't necessarily happy about it. Lou and Al happen to meet standing in line for some coffee as Al smells the wonderful concoction called coconut cake coming from the cake box Lou is carrying. I won't give you the details of how or why, but just know that's how they meet. The story continues, and Al ends up reviewing Lou's restaurant. Now, that review literally takes place on the worst day of Lou's life, and everything goes wrong. And Al ends up writing this searing review that just crushes her, and it crushes her restaurant. So she retreats in an old-fashioned manner to the local bar to drink her sorrows away. And there she meets Al again. Now, unbeknownst to them both, Lou does not know who Al is, and Al does not know who Lou is, and they come together, right? So Lou decides to escape her real life of her food restaurant and befriend Al and turn his grumpiness around and show him all of the things, especially the food things, that Wisconsin has to offer. So they don't know who each other is, but they go on this journey together. Later, over time, over countless dinner dates, over lots of little moments of perhaps something else, they eventually both learn the truth of who they really are. And that's when the story truly begins. Now, I can't say much more than that, right? I don't want to give it away, but I want to say that this book is technically fiction, but I look at it as a guidebook for how to enjoy and embrace life. That's really what I got out of it. It's a lesson in how to live life to the fullest, including how to get the best food possible in that process. And it's a guidebook about the power of second chances. I truly loved every page, and I'm so thankful that my crazy whimsical idea of reading more books about cake led me to this book. I would never have known it without it. So, 3 books that I shared with you today: The Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake, Black Cake, and The Coincidence of Coconut Cake. Now, yes, cake is the main theme that brought these 3 books together, but in a different way. So in one book, cake becomes the method that our main character learns about the people around her and ultimately how the world works and maybe how it should. In Black Cake, cake becomes that common thread of how to mend a broken family. And in the 3rd book, cake is the reason that 2 strangers were brought together for ultimately a bigger goal that neither of them knew. Right? So how can we bring this bookish theme to life in our actual life? Because that's what we do here on the Get Literate podcast. Well, first, just go have some cake. Do that for me, will you? Do me a favor and just go have a wonderful bite of gluten-filled, dairy-filled, sugar-filled cake and enjoy every second. That is my wish for you first after listening to this podcast. But then I want you to go a little bit deeper. I want you to think about a family recipe that you have that seems to be a tie that binds, just like we saw in these books. Maybe it's not cake, or maybe it is. But is there a recipe that has been passed down in your family that symbolizes so much more than cake, as we saw in these books? For me, if I think of just my immediate family of 5 with my husband and my 3 teenagers, it is what we call pumpkin squares. Now, it is cake, but it's a very thin cake, and it is layered with the most yummy, sweet, gooey cream cheese frosting. It was passed down from my husband's father, who got it from his mother, and I imagine got it even before that. And it is a holiday staple. And anytime we just need a nice comforting boost in between. It is time to break out the pumpkin cake, the pumpkin squares given this time of year. And so I'm going to be tinkering with it a bit to see if I can get a gluten-free, dairy-free, maybe low sugar version to enjoy, but we'll have to wait and see how that goes. But find your thing. Find your cake, find your recipe, and just think about how much is wrapped up into that cake. You might get out your journal or your notebook and really think about it for a minute. What's the recipe that stands out? And then think about the amount of family and love and history and belonging that might be funneled through that particular dish the way it did in our 3 books. And then celebrate it and make sure it's passed down. Make sure that recipe is handwritten so that you can keep that going in your family. Maybe get it printed up, put it online in a blog, print it in the Christmas card. Do something to make sure that that one thing keeps living on forever so that you can leave the kind of legacy behind that we saw in these 3 books. So eat some cake and then figure out what your family cake or your family recipe might be. Now, if you are part of my Get Literate Patreon community, where I put bonus episodes and live events and all sorts of things, then you'll see that we've got some upcoming fun inside the community, a little sneak peek where we'll share our own recipes and our own family heritage pieces through food that are tying us together as well. So if you want to get in a little bit more on the fun, you can find us at getliterate.co, and you can join our Patreon community for just $5 a month and get bonus episodes, book clubs, other live events, and so much more. But you can also find me on social media. I'm at AfinitoLit on all of the platforms, and I'd love for you to join my new Facebook page. Actually, it's not a page, it's a group. It's a Facebook group just for listeners of this podcast who want to talk about these bookish themes every week or pose questions for your own bookish themes that you want to bring to life. So you can head on to Facebook, search for Get Literate. It's a quick Q&A. Tell me a book that you're reading, and you'll be let right into the community. And then one more thing, if you haven't rated and reviewed this podcast, I would love it. I am actually going to expand in November and hopefully add a couple of bonus episodes here and there. And in order to get it out to as many people as possible who could benefit from these kinds of conversations, rating and reviews is what does it. It boosts the algorithm so others can see Get Literate when they log into their own platform. So if you do rate and review, head online to my website at alitlife.com and fill out the quick Google form letting me know you have, and you'll get a chance to win my brand new, so excited, can't wait until it's here, book journal. You'll get the book journal, a book sleeve, and a little bit of bookish bling to bring some more fun to your reading life. So that's it for me. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful week and happy reading, everyone. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Get Literate podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at www.alitlife.com. You'll also find additional inspiration for your reading and writing life there, like book lists, notebooking ideas, personalized book recommendations, and an invitation to join my Get Literate members community. Each month, we take a deep dive into one bookish theme and work to bring it to life in our own lives. You'll get a monthly bibliotherapy book calendar with a book recommendation for every day of the month, bonus episodes, live book club sessions, and much more. Learn more at www.getliterate.co.